Hi everybody, Michelle McClunan, astrologer and life navigator, and I'm bringing you an astrology update for the next full moon, which is happening on the 19th of August in the Aries sign of Aquarius. Now this is a really big alignment, this full moon. I know that we always say that, but this one's probably one of the most interesting alignments that we've had all year and will have for the remainder of the year. And some astrologers are even seeing it as one of the most important alignments of the decade. So when we look at the factors of why that is, it's quite a lot of astrology, and I'm aware that a lot of you are not astrologers. So what I try to do in these updates is try to bring it into English because astrology really is a language. It's a language of energy. And so you have this planet over here and this planet over here, and they energetically are forming an alignment. That's really what an astrology reading is. It's what your birth chart is about. It's an energetic alignment of energy. And at any one moment, we have energies aligning around us, sometimes but not always, triggering our own personal chart. So, having said that, there's a lot of astrology that I can explain to you, but I'm not going to too much detail, apart from, I'm going to give you the main things leading up to the full moon, which is basically, I'm creating this video on the 15th of August, leading up to the full moon, and not only on the day of the full moon. These energies are continually moving around. There's just a culmination or a focal point when we have a new moon and a full moon, and there's an amplification of energy. Leading up to the full moon, we have a T-square, which basically means an alignment between three different areas in the chart. This is the astrology part. I'll try and explain it. This one is Mars and Jupiter in the sign of Gemini, square the planet Saturn, and opposite and square the planet Venus. So you've got Mars and Jupiter over here, and square to that is Venus, and opposing that, and square to Mars and Jupiter, is Saturn. So that is what we call a T-square. It's a tension square. That's leading up to the full moon, and it will be very, very definitely in flow in the full moon. The full moon itself also forms a T-square. So what we have is two T-squares. The full moon is going to be the Sun and Mercury opposite the moon and square Uranus, the planet of change. So that gives us two T-squares, which is quite big. So I'm going to try and break the energy down a little bit so that we can actually see what that means. So it's not all just about astrology. Remember, it's the study of energy, okay? And we often feel it. So approaching the full moon and leading up to the full moon over this weekend and now, you might be feeling a sort of a blustery energy. I felt it most specifically yesterday because the wind was howling here, and it felt that sort of little bit of a discomfort, the winds of change. Something's blowing, something's changing, something's shifting. It doesn't feel particularly stable. And this energy that we have coming up and right now is not particularly stable. Nothing is stable, actually, in the world of form. The only thing that is stable is our presence in this moment. So we're realizing that there's an instability around us. There's an instability in our world. If you look at the political situations, the economic situations that we find ourselves in, there's a lot of instability in our form, in our world of form, in our world of things, in the world of things that we've always placed great hope and trust in that will be steady and stable. This is not that energy. It's not a steady, stable energy. When you look at the moon is in the sign of Aquarius, and it is opposite the Sun and Mercury in the sign of Leo. Full moon's always a time to expand, always a time to culminate, to let go, to release, and also a time of culmination, of something actually coming to a head which needs to be let go of. That's a full moon. So at full moons, we can feel energy stronger or more strongly than at other times. So if you have anything in the late degrees of any of the fixed signs, you would be feeling this more. So if you have your moon there, if you have Mercury there, Venus there, the Sun, the ascendant, if you've had your chart done, anything at around about 26, 27, 28 degrees of fixed signs, that would be Leo, Taurus, Scorpio, and Aquarius. You would be feeling this more. that would then play out according to the house and the houses that is activated, that you would also need to look at your chart for. So when you look at this full moon, there is the energy of that creative sovereignty that I've spoken about before, which is the Leo wanting to shine its light out into the universe in a creative expression of uniqueness. Then opposite that, we've got Aquarius, which is the sign of the people, it's the sign of humanity, it's the sign of community, and those two are kind of opposite each other. Now, making it more exciting and more roller coastery, on the day of the full moon, we have Uranus, which is the planet of change and the ruler of Aquarius. So in other words, the ruler of the full moon, Uranus. Uranus is at the exact same degree. So what happens is we have the moon in a square to Uranus. We also have the Sun and Mercury in a square to Uranus. Now that augurs a lot of change. Sometimes upheaval, sometimes volatile energy. The energies that we're speaking about are fire, air, and earth. Earth, in terms of the Taurian energy, which is where Uranus is, rules our economy. It rules our sense of stability, our sense of safety. So that is all under the influence of these energies that are actually forming right now. So what this means is that there's almost like a shaking up, almost that we're being shaken to awaken. Uranus has got the energy of breaking up the surface of the ground, particularly when it's going through the sign of Taurus. So breaking up the surface of the ground, the staticness, the old, in order to make way for the new. And this is amplified by the moon being in Aquarius, which is ruled by Uranus. It's a lot of astrology, I know. So what that means, though, is that this week, and possibly even further than the full moon, we're going to find probably a few shocks, a few shock waves, possibly very charged energy, very possibly in our outer world, in terms of our economies, in terms of the money system, also in terms of the things that we use, the devices that we use. Mercury, which is caught up in this T-square, is in the sign of Leo, but it's retrograde. Mercury retrograde will often align with miscommunication, with breakdowns in our cyber world, in terms of our internet providers, power outages, internet outages. So I would say that there's a good chance of that in the next week or so. So I think, again, download and back up anything that you want to keep. I think that's a very good idea. Maybe even take it off your device and put it on a storage disk or something. So I think that's a really important thing to do this week. Economically and politically, I'm not a political astrologer, but looking at the astrology of the United States, which not because I'm American, but because America's chart and the charts of its rulers and its proposed rulers is very much under the spotlight of the current energy. That's why I'm highlighting it. America, the American chart, is very much under the influence of this. Its moon is actually at the same degree as this full moon, so it's under the influence of this Aquarius, of this Uranian full moon, as well as Donald Trump's chart, Kamala Harris's chart. All of their charts are actually under the influence of this. So I think that there could be quite a lot of volatility around that. When this kind of energy is around, there can be explosiveness, there can be aggression, there can be a lot of volatility. Adding to that, we have the second T-square, which is Mars and Jupiter in a square to Venus and Saturn. Now, Venus rules our money and our relationships, and Saturn opposite that can sort of ask us to question that. Question where we're investing our money, how we're earning our money, what money means to us, re-establishing, restructuring our relationship with our resources, as well as our self-values, as our values, as our self-worth, and also it impacts on relationships. So you might find that this is a time where you are testing. It's a testing time of relationships. Old stuff from the past can come up, particularly issues around perfectionism, criticism. Venus is in the sign of Virgo this coming full moon, and it's opposite Saturn. So Saturn is really saying, where is the criticism? If you're criticizing others, where is that criticism in yourself? What are you criticizing in yourself? And is that being projected? So we could see a lot of projections. We could also see a lot of restructuring of relationships, of contracts. It's kind of re-looking at contracts. It's re-looking at our commitments. Saturn is the planet of commitments. So re-looking at our commitments and what we've lined up to do, and do we still want to do it? And are we still doing it in an alignment with our own values? I think that's a really important part as well. Now those two are square Mars and Jupiter. Mars and Jupiter are in the sign of Gemini, which kind of means to me that there's a lot of information out there. Gemini is the sign of information, of communication, and it's amplified with Jupiter and Mars being there. So that could mean being in that alignment, there could be a lot of misalignment. There could be a lot of disagreements. There could be a lot of conflict out there in the world. So the world could feel a little bit crazy right now, and also going into the future, at least for the next week or two. This is kind of carrying through. A lot of these alignments are carrying through until the end of the month. The other thing that's happening is that in 2020 we had the planets Saturn and Jupiter that came into a very close alignment, and we all know what happened there. There was a restriction in terms of our freedom. If you look at Saturn and you look at Jupiter, Saturn is restriction, Jupiter is freedom. Our freedoms were restricted for a long time. Now, all these years later, we've got Jupiter that has moved on because it moves faster than Saturn. So Jupiter has now moved into a square with Saturn. And that is what we call this a crisis square. So what that means is that some of the themes that were present then could re-arise and come up again, but in a different way. It almost means like there's quite a lot of conflict and quite a lot of kickback and fighting back against any kind of restriction. So I think that's also a factor to bear in mind. This is also activating Pluto's arrival in Aquarius at 0 degrees of Aquarius, and is about to retrograde back into Capricorn until November, when it moves forward again. And that's our sort of last visitation of these old conditioning patterns that we're letting go of. So that's also being brought into the picture because of this full moon being in the sign of Aquarius. So that's bringing Pluto into the equation as well. So I would just say that over the next week, try to rein it in. It's the energy of expansion and contraction. Do I go out guns blazing, or do I lean in? Do I lean back? That's the play, particularly Jupiter and Saturn. Expansion, contraction, freedom, responsibility. I'm responsible for this, but I also want to be free. It's that kind of dynamic. Where is my responsibility, and how do I find my freedom? Where do I find my freedom? So it's a real testing of values. What is true to me? How do I connect back into my true power? It's actually really asking us, where does our power exist? Where do we find our power? Over the next few years, particularly over the next 20 years, because Pluto is going into Aquarius for 20 years, we're going to be realizing that the power that we thought we held in a sort of a physical way is not as powerful as our true power as energetic beings. Already we are having incredible inventions and discoveries in how we can actually heal ourselves on a quantum level when we connect with our true power. It's amazing work. I mean, a woman that was on one of Joe Dispenza's workshops, they were doing quite a lot of research into what would happen if you come into the 0 point, which is when you come into presence over and over again over a period of 5 or 6 days. And one of the women on the workshop went to the workshop without a thyroid because her thyroid had been taken out. And during the course of the workshop, her thyroid grew back. Now, I know that sounds crazy and ridiculous, but that is what happens. There are miraculous healings that happen every day that we don't hear about. And I think we're going to be hearing more about that as we start to realize where our true power actually lies. And I think this is a quantum shift in our human evolution, like we have never seen before. I keep saying that, but if you're feeling it, if you're feeling this major shift inside, it's kind of a rumbling energy that is changing, just know you're not alone. And know that if nothing makes sense, if things don't make sense anymore, if your career doesn't make sense, the relationship doesn't make sense, the way you're earning your living doesn't make sense, if it doesn't make sense, it's okay, because what is leaving needs to leave. What is dissolving needs to dissolve for the new to actually come in. But we're still in that state of kind of in between worlds. And that's a place that's quite difficult for the human, because the human wants to know what's going to happen and how it's going to happen and when it's going to happen. And so I would just say in the next week particularly, just keep going into the center of the wheel. Stormy waters, stormy skies. Imagine that you've got a wheel and the storm is happening on the outside of the wheel, and you have the power to actually bring yourself into the center of the wheel. If you feel like you're getting dragged into the drama, see if you can rise above and look at the situation. If you feel triggered by somebody who is very angry or very triggered themselves, see if you can drop into your center, drop into your heart, and just see if you can hold a neutral space. It's not always easy, particularly at times like this, where we get triggered very quickly. This is very blustery energy. So just go into the center, step into the part of you that is the witness, the part of you that is not the drama, the part of you that is not storming, the calm in the middle of the storm. And if you can see the storm and not get drawn into it, then you're not the storm. You're not in the storm. You're watching the storm. And that's lovingly. And that's the place that if we hold that place, we are then actually contributing to positive change on our planet. If we get drawn into the storm, we are not, because we're losing our power when we do that. So lots and lots of energy, lots of tension in the air, lots of energy though, on the upside of that, there's lots of energy for change. So this is a time where we literally can change our energy. We can change the way we react, with the way we see ourselves, the way we think. We can change our thoughts. We can change our emotional state. We can change our reactivity. And this energy is helping us to do that by showing us what does not serve us anymore. I hope that shines some light on this full moon. Just know that it's not just on the day of the full moon. It's really leading up to and after the full moon. So just see if you can keep your center in the middle of the storm throughout this. A good idea to do some kind of a ritual on the full moon, some kind of letting go, some kind of intention of releasing that which no longer serves and opening to the new. That is this full moon in Aquarius, is opening to the unknown, to the exciting, to the fullness of something that might not have manifested yet, to the new, a new way, a new earth, if you like. So I drew a card for this one, and the card that I drew was Thecla, Thecla. And she's known as the prophetess of true power, and it's from the divine feminine. We don't have a lot of watery energy around this full moon, so I feel that we need to bring in the feminine energy this full moon particularly. Bring in water, by the way. That'll also help to calm down the air and the fire, which is very active. So Thecla represents the ability to call back all of our power. The meditation for this card is I call back my power from all times and all places. I am my own. Just feel the energy of those words. I call back my power from all times and all places. I am my own, and breathe as you say that. This is a story that relates to a young woman's call to a life of teaching and healing in the Christ movement in Asia Minor, current-day Turkey. Thecla, daughter of Thecla, at age 17, overhears Paul teaching about Christ. She stays rooted in place at her window for 3 days so she won't miss a word. Her mother had arranged for her to be married. So when Thecla feels called to begin her own ministry, she is sentenced to burn for refusing to be a bride. Just as the flames are surrounding her, though, she makes the sign of the cross and a huge storm puts the fire out. She finds Paul, cuts her hair short, and tells him, "Only give me the seal of Christ and no trial will touch me." He suggests that she isn't ready for baptism yet. Shortly after, a president of the Council of Syria tries to take Thecla into the streets to be his bride. She tears off his cloak and takes the crown from his head, publicly shaming him for trying to take her without her consent. She is then sentenced to death by wild beasts. In the arena, all the women protest judgment of Thecla, proclaiming her innocence. A huge lioness enters the arena, approaches Thecla, and then licks her feet and bows before her. Thecla enters the pool in the arena that is filled with sea lions, wild sea lions. The women fear that she will be killed, but she declares, "In the name of Jesus Christ, I baptize myself." Suddenly she is shielded and protected by a great ring of fire, and a glowing white robe suddenly appears on her body. Paul tells her to go and teach the word of God. It's recorded in the Acts of Paul and Thecla that she lived until 90 and enlightened many. Her ministry proves the existence of female authority. So that really does speak into this full moon, because the lions, Leo, her being this person who stands in her own truth as an individual, being that Aquarian energy, I march to the beat of my own drum. That's Aquarius. So when your soul selects this card, Thecla's story echoes from the ancient world to the modern world. Your life is up to you. Yes, there is the power of prayer, of faith, of asking for all possible spiritual support. There's also the divine will within each of us. It's will that's aligned with the soul's purpose. We remember what true power is when we divest all outside authority of the power we had given them. Power is calling back all the control we give to others to dictate our lives, our potential life partners, our family members, our culture, even our own ego's idea of who we should be. Thecla reminds us that we do not need permission to be who we are. We can cut our hair short and baptize ourselves. We are not bound by anything except the dictates of our own soul. Her mudra is one of awe and wonder. We have all the power right now within us to take our life into our own hands. That is the source of fire itself, the divine will to call back our spiritual authority and claim this life as our soul's own. And a question to ask on the full moon, leading up to the full moon, is where have I given my power away? So we're talking here about true, authentic power, not the power that forces people to do what you want them to do, but the power that exists within us, underneath the surface of all the roles, all the conditioning, and all of what we have been told to be in order to be acceptable. And that is the energy of Aquarius. Aquarius stands and says, I am not this. I am the all that is. It has a bigger picture of what this is all about. So I think that's a very powerful card to take us through this full moon and hopefully really align with the energy of change, embrace change, because change is happening. So the more we fight it, the more we resist, the more we shut down, the more we close our hearts. So it's to breathe and open. Yeah, I'm on this journey. I'm on this roller coaster. I'm signed up for this. We signed up for this journey. We signed up to be shown where our conditioning is so that we can free ourselves of it. That's the moon in Aquarius. Freedom, liberation from the beliefs which are erroneous of who we aren't and who we should be. I hope that has helped you to navigate your way through this next week and through the full moon. Embrace the power within you. If you would like to book a reading, you're welcome to contact me through my website below. I am available for readings. If you've had your chart done before, then we can look to see where these planets are playing out in your particular chart. And if you haven't had your chart done before, it's a good idea to have one done so that you can see what your blueprint is. It's an energetic blueprint. It's a map. It's a very helpful map. Astrology, every day that I practice astrology, does teach me that there is a divine plan, that none of this is random. You are not sitting in the room that you're sitting in because it's random. You're not in a situation that is random. You're not having an emotion that is random. You're not having problems that are random. There is a divine plan. And it's the leaning into that, the trusting that there is a divine plan and it is unfolding the way it's supposed to unfold. And our job is to align with it and not to fight it. I hope that's helped, and if you did like this video, please would you like it? That helps. Comment. I'd love to hear your comments, and share it if you think it's helpful and other people will benefit from it. Thanks so much for listening, and all the best. Stay grounded. Stay firm in the truth of who you really are. Thank you.